The pink stain glared at me from his collar like a confession. I stood frozen in our laundry room, my husband Daniel's white dress shirt dangling from my trembling fingers, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. The lipstick wasn't mine. I never wore that shade, a bright, almost fuchsia pink that screamed youth and confidence. Mine were always subdued mauves and nudes, professional colors that didn't draw attention. But this was unmistakable. And fresh. From last night, when he'd claimed to be working late. My stomach clenched as a wave of nausea swept through me. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a mortgage, countless sacrifices, all suddenly called into question by a smudge of color no bigger than a thumbprint. I sank to the cold tile floor, shirt still clutched in my hand, and tried to breathe. The laundry basket loomed beside me, half full of our mingled clothes, our shared life. My wedding ring caught the overhead light, the small diamond throwing fractured rainbows onto the wall that now seemed to mock me. "Megan?" Daniel's voice came from upstairs. "Have you seen my blue tie? The one with the stripes?" I cleared my throat, willing my voice to sound normal. "No," I called back, surprised at how steady I sounded when inside I was collapsing. "I haven't seen it." Footsteps approached the laundry room. I quickly stuffed the shirt back into the basket and stood, brushing imaginary dust from my jeans. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his dark hair still damp from the shower, smelling of the sandalwood cologne I'd given him for his birthday, the same cologne that had mingled with something else, a floral, youthful scent, when he'd come home last night. "Hey," he said, smiling. The same smile I'd fallen in love with 17 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. The smile that had reassured me through job changes, family deaths, and the difficult births of our children. The smile I suddenly couldn't trust. "Everything okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired. Early meeting today?" I moved past him, careful not to make contact. "The blue tie should be on your side of the closet. Second rack." His hand caught my arm as I passed. "Meg, are you sure you're okay?" I pulled away, unable to bear his touch. I said, "I'm fine, Daniel. I need to wake up Emma for school." His brow furrowed slightly, but he nodded. "Okay, I'll make some coffee." As I climbed the stairs to our daughter's room, my mind raced. Who was she? Someone from work? The new client he'd mentioned? The receptionist with the sleek ponytail who'd flirted with him at his company Christmas party? Or someone I didn't even know existed? I paused outside Emma's door, my hand on the knob, and took several deep breaths. Our children couldn't see me like this. Emma, 13 and already so perceptive, would know immediately that something was wrong. And Noah, only 9, still believed his parents were infallible. I put on my mother face, the one that hid exhaustion, worry, and now betrayal, and pushed open the door. "Rise and shine." "Sweetheart," I said, my voice carefully modulated to sound normal. "Time for school." The day passed in a fog. I went through the motions, dropped the kids at school, attended my meetings at the architectural firm where I was a project manager, responded to emails, ate a lunch I couldn't taste. All while the image of that lipstick stain burned in my mind. I could have confronted him immediately. Maybe I should have. But the truth was I was afraid. Afraid of what he'd say, afraid of what it would mean for us, for our family, and underneath that fear was something else. A tiny, shameful sense of validation. Because things hadn't been right between us for months, maybe even years. We'd fallen into the routine so many long-married couples do, parallel lives that occasionally intersected around children, household tasks, and obligatory date nights that felt more like checking boxes than connecting. When was the last time he'd really seen me? When had I last truly looked at him? The lipstick was a shock, but not entirely a surprise. Something had changed in our marriage, and I'd been willfully ignoring it. By the time I picked up the kids from their after-school activities, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I would watch, wait, gather evidence. I needed to know the whole truth before I decided what to do with it. Noah bounded into the car first, all energy and boyish enthusiasm. "Mom, I made the science team," he announced, buckling his seatbelt. "We're going to the state competition." I forced a smile. "That's fantastic, honey. Dad will be so proud. Emma slid into the passenger seat more sedately, already buried in her phone. At 13, she was on the cusp of leaving childhood behind, her face thinning into the woman she would become. I studied her profile, so like Daniel's, and felt a pang of loss for everything this betrayal might cost her. "How was your day, Em?" I asked, pulling away from the curb. She shrugged without looking up. "Fine. Ms. Beckett gave us a pop quiz in history." She paused, finally glancing over. "Are you okay, Mom? You look weird," I forced a laugh. "Thanks a lot." "Just tired from a big project at work." She studied me for a moment longer, her eyes, my eyes, narrowing slightly before she returned to her phone. I'd bought myself some time, but not much. Emma didn't miss things. At home, I moved mechanically through our evening routine, supervising homework, preparing dinner, checking permission slips. Daniel texted that he'd be late again. Another meeting. Each word on the screen felt like a slap. Meeting running long. Don't wait up. Love you, did he? Did I still love him? I stared at the text, wondering what was real and what was habit. After the kids were in bed, I retrieved the shirt from where I'd hidden it in my closet. The stain seemed to have grown, or maybe my imagination was making it larger, more significant. I sat on our bed, the bed we'd shared for 15 years, and traced the outline of the lipstick with my finger. Impulse drove me to my makeup drawer. I lined up my lipsticks, comparing them to the stain. As I suspected, nothing matched. My colors were muted, mature. This was vivid, youthful. I heard the garage door open downstairs. Quickly, I returned my makeup to the drawer and hid the shirt again. When Daniel entered our bedroom 20 minutes later, I was sitting in bed with a book I wasn't reading, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Hey," he said, loosening his tie. "Kids asleep?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the shower run, imagining him washing away evidence of wherever he'd been, with whomever he'd been with. When he emerged in his pajama pants, hair wet and face flushed from the hot water, he looked so much like the man I'd married that I almost broke down and confronted him then. Instead, I watched as he climbed into bed beside me, picked up his own book, and settled in as if nothing had changed, as if he hadn't shattered the foundation of our life together. "How was your meeting?" I asked, amazed at how casual I sounded. "Brutal," he sighed, rubbing his eyes. "The Johnson project is a mess. The client keeps changing specifications after we've already started production." The ease with which he lied, if he was lying, stunned me. Had he always been this good at deception, or was it a new skill he'd developed along with his talent for betrayal? "That sounds stressful," I said, turning a page I hadn't read. He glanced over, studying me. "You okay? You've seemed off all day." For a fleeting moment, I considered confronting him, throwing the shirt in his face and demanding answers. But the children were asleep down the hall, and I wasn't ready for whatever would follow. "Not yet, just tired," I said, the excuse becoming my shield. "Big presentation tomorrow." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "You'll nail it." "You always do." The casual confidence in his voice, the absolute certainty that I was competent, capable, made my throat tighten with unshed tears. This was the man who'd believed in me through every professional doubt, who'd celebrated every promotion, who'd picked up the slack at home when my career demanded more of me. How could he be that man and also the man who left lipstick on his collar? He leaned over and kissed my cheek, his lips brushing against my skin with familiar tenderness. "Don't stay up too late," he murmured. I nodded, not looking at him, afraid my eyes would betray me. As his breathing deepened into sleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wondering who else he had kissed with those same lips, and whether he'd shown the same tenderness. The questions circled in my mind like vultures, picking at the carcass of what I'd thought was a happy marriage. Sleep eluded me. Around 3 a.m, I slipped from our bed and padded downstairs. In the kitchen, illuminated only by the dim light over the stove, I made a cup of tea and faced the ugly truth. I needed to know more. And to do that, I would need to become someone I never thought I'd be. A wife who spied on her husband. The next few days, I became hyper-aware of every detail of Daniel's behavior. The time he left for work and returned home, the calls he took in another room, the way he guarded his phone. I hated myself for it, but I began checking his pockets, scrolling through his call history when he was in the shower, even tracking his location using the family sharing app we'd set up years ago for practical purposes. Nothing. No obvious evidence of an affair. No unexplained charges on credit cards. No suspicious texts. No mysterious phone numbers. Just normal workday locations and regular business contacts. But the lipstick stain remained, hidden in my closet like a ticking bomb. A week after my discovery, I sat in my car outside Daniel's office building during what should have been his lunch hour. The family tracking app showed he was still at work, but I needed to see for myself. Needed to know if he was meeting someone. I felt disgusted with myself. This wasn't who I was, who we were. Daniel and I had always prided ourselves on our honesty, our trust. Now here I was, sinking to the level of a jealous, suspicious spouse. As I watched the entrance, a familiar figure emerged. Daniel, walking with a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger, maybe early 30s, with sleek black hair pulled back in a ponytail. They walked close together, heads bent in conversation, and disappeared into a cafe across the street. My heart raced as I grabbed my purse and followed, propelled by a need to know that overrode all sense of dignity or restraint. Inside the cafe, I spotted them at a corner table still deep in conversation. I slid into a booth with a view of their table, hiding behind a menu. The woman leaned forward, saying something emphatic, her red-painted lips forming words I couldn't hear. Daniel nodded, his face serious. Then, incredibly, he reached across the table and took her hand. My vision blurred. The menu trembled in my hands. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could see was my husband holding another woman's hand in a public place, as if he had every right to do so. Then the woman pulled her hand away, checked her watch, and stood. Daniel stood too, and they embraced. Briefly, professionally, but still an embrace. She walked away, and Daniel returned to the table, gathering papers I hadn't noticed before into a folder. I ducked my head as he passed my booth, praying he wouldn't notice me. He didn't. Once he'd left the cafe, I exhaled the breath I'd been holding and slumped against the seat. What had I just witnessed? A business meeting or something more personal? The hand-holding seemed intimate, but their parting had been cordial rather than romantic. And the woman had been wearing red lipstick, not the bright pink of the stain. I left the cafe in a daze, more confused than ever. One thing was becoming painfully clear. I couldn't continue like this. The suspicion was eating me alive, turning me into someone I didn't recognize or like. I needed answers, even if they destroyed us. That night, as we cleaned up after dinner, I watched Daniel loading the dishwasher, a chore he'd taken over years ago when I complained about how he never helped with housework. He'd simply said, "You're right," and started doing it without being asked. It was one of the countless small ways he'd shown me he was willing to grow, to meet me halfway. "Daniel," I said, the word coming out more sharply than I intended. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprise registering on his face at my tone. "Okay, is something wrong?" I glanced at the ceiling, aware of our children moving around upstairs. "Not here. After the kids are in bed." Concern clouded his features. "Meg, what's going on?" "You've been acting strange for days now." I turned away, unable to meet his gaze. "Later, Daniel, please." The evening crawled by. I checked homework, signed permission slips, listened to Noah practice his science presentation, all while anxiety gnawed at my insides. Finally, after goodnight kisses and last glasses of water, the kids were settled. Daniel was waiting for me in the living room, a glass of wine poured for each of us. The gesture, so thoughtful, so typical of him, made my eyes sting with tears. "Sit," he said, patting the couch beside him. "Talk to me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." I remained standing. "Who is she?" His brow furrowed. "Who is who?" "The woman you had lunch with today. Black hair, red lipstick." Surprise registered on his face. "Vanessa?" "She's a client." How did you— Understanding dawned. Were you following me? The accusation in his voice ignited my anger. How dare he act betrayed when he was the one with lipstick on his collar? Don't turn this around on me, I snapped. I saw you holding her hand. He set down his wine glass. I was consoling her. Her father just died, and the project we're working on was his dream. She's trying to honor his memory by completing it. He stood facing me. Megan, what the hell is going on? Why would you follow me to a business lunch? I stormed upstairs and returned with the shirt, which I threw at him. Because of this. Explain that, Daniel. He caught the shirt, confusion clear on his face until he saw the pink stain. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, then. Was that relief? That's what this has been about? He asked, his voice softening. You thought I was cheating on you because of this stain? Don't insult my intelligence, I said, my voice shaking. It's lipstick. It's not my shade. You came home late that night smelling like perfume. What am I supposed to think? Daniel sat down heavily, the shirt in his lap. He looked up at me, and to my surprise I saw the beginning of a smile. It's not what you think, Meg. Then what is it? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing it looks exactly like what I think. He stood and took my hands. I tried to pull away, but he held firm. I need to show you something, he said. Get your coat. What, now? It's almost 10 o'clock. Yes, now. The kids are asleep, and Mrs. Feldman next door can listen for them. This can't wait another day. Bewildered, I let him guide me out to the car. As he drove through our suburban neighborhood, I stared out the window, my mind racing. Was he taking me to meet her? To confess in some neutral location? Had our entire marriage been a lie? 20 minutes later, he pulled up in front of an unfamiliar brick building in a part of town I rarely visited. What is this place? I asked as he came around to open my door. You'll see, he said, taking my hand again. We entered a foyer with a security desk. The guard recognized Daniel and nodded us through. My confusion mounted as we took an elevator to the 3rd floor and walked down a brightly lit hallway with doors on either side. Daniel stopped at room 312 and produced a key. Daniel, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What is going on? He opened the door and gestured for me to enter first. I stepped into what appeared to be a small apartment. It was modestly furnished but clean and bright, with framed photographs on the walls, and sitting in an armchair by the window, wearing a bright pink bathrobe, was an elderly woman I'd never seen before. Mom, Daniel said, his voice gentle. You're still up. I thought you'd be asleep by now. The woman turned toward us, her face lighting up at the sound of Daniel's voice. She had the same dark eyes as my husband, but they were clouded, unfocused. Danny? Is that you, sweetheart? Her voice was thin but warm. It's me, Mom, and I've brought someone to meet you. This is Megan. The woman's face brightened further. Megan, Danny's wife! He's told me so much about you. She extended her hands, and I found myself moving forward to take them. They were soft, papery, with prominent veins under translucent skin. It's nice to meet you, I said automatically, while my mind struggled to make sense of the situation. Daniel had told me his mother died when he was in college. Who was this woman? Daniel pulled up chairs for us beside his mother, whose eyes roamed the room without quite focusing on either of us. Megan, he said quietly. This is Eleanor Winters, my birth mother. I stared at him, uncomprehending. Your birth mother? But you told me your parents died. Your mother had cancer, and your father had a heart attack a few years later. Eleanor patted my hand. Those were his adoptive parents, dear. Wonderful people. They gave Danny everything I couldn't. Daniel nodded, his eyes on the elderly woman. I was adopted as an infant. Margaret and Thomas Winters were my parents in every way that matters. They raised me, loved me. He turned to me, his expression somber. What I told you about them was true. They did die while I was in college. My mind reeled. But why wouldn't you tell me about her? I gestured toward Eleanor. Because I didn't know about her until 8 months ago, he said simply. Eleanor leaned forward. I found him, dear. I never stopped looking. Her voice quavered with emotion. I gave him up when I was 17. My parents forced me to Said I'd ruin my life if I kept him. They arranged a closed adoption, told me I could never contact him. Her clouded eyes filled with tears. But I never forgot my baby. Not for one single day. I looked between them, pieces slowly falling into place. You've been coming here at night? The late meetings, Daniel nodded. Mom has early-stage Alzheimer's. She found me through one of those DNA ancestry websites. Hired a private investigator with her savings. His voice cracked slightly. She was determined to find me before she forgot who I was, who she was looking for. Eleanor beamed at him, her face soft with adoration. My beautiful boy, I knew I'd find you someday. Why keep this from me? I asked, hurt threading through my confusion. We don't keep secrets, Daniel. Not big ones like this. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. I was going to tell you. I just needed time. It was overwhelming, meeting her, hearing her story, learning that everything I thought I knew about my birth was different. He took my hand. And then her condition started deteriorating faster than expected. The doctors say she could have good days and bad days, but the trajectory is clear. I needed time with her, to know her, before... He couldn't finish the sentence. Eleanor seemed oblivious to the conversation, humming softly to herself as she smoothed the fabric of her robe. The lipstick, I said suddenly, remembering why we were here. The stain on your collar, Daniel smiled sadly. Mom loves her makeup even now, especially the bright colors. The nursing staff help her put it on every morning. He turned to Eleanor. Right, Mom? You still love your pink lipstick, Eleanor brightened. Pink makes me happy. My mother always said ladies wear red, but I love pink. She reached for a tube on the side table and applied it messily to her lips without a mirror. See? Pretty? The same bright fuchsia from the stain. My throat tightened as understanding dawned. She hugs me every time I visit, Daniel explained softly. Sometimes she gets confused, especially in the evenings. She clings tightly, calls me different names, her brothers, her fathers. I think in her mind I'm every man she's ever loved who's gone away. A tear slipped down my cheek as the full weight of my misunderstanding hit me. All this time I'd been suspecting Daniel of betraying our marriage, when he'd been spending his evenings with his dying birth mother, trying to squeeze a lifetime of knowing her into whatever lucid time she had left. I'm so sorry. I whispered to Daniel, to Eleanor, to the universe for my lack of faith. I should have trusted you. Should have asked instead of assuming the worst. Daniel squeezed my hand. I should have told you from the beginning. I just didn't know how. It felt so surreal, meeting her after all these years. Learning my story was different than what I'd always believed. Eleanor had begun to doze in her chair, the lipstick tube still clutched in her hand. Daniel gently pried it loose and set it on the table. She tires easily now, he said. Some days she remembers who I am. Other days I'm just a nice man who visits her. His voice broke slightly. The staff here say I should treasure the good days while they last. I moved to stand beside him, wrapping an arm around his waist. I wish you'd told me. You didn't have to go through this alone, he leaned into me. I know. I was going to tell you this weekend, actually. I'd arranged for my sister to watch the kids. Wanted to bring you here, introduce you properly, he sighed. I guess we're doing that now, just not how I planned. Your sister? I asked, startled. You have a sister too? Daniel nodded. Half-sister. Mom had another child years later after she married. Caroline. We've been getting to know each other too. He smiled ruefully. Turns out I have this whole other family I never knew about. A sister, nieces, nephews. It's been a lot to process. I thought about the weight he'd been carrying these past months, meeting his birth mother, discovering siblings, all while watching Eleanor's mind slowly slip away. And instead of supporting him, I'd been suspicious, accusatory. Daniel, I began, but he cut me off with a gentle kiss. It's okay. I understand why you thought what you did. The lipstick, the late nights, my distraction. He cupped my face. I'm sorry I shut you out. I just needed to understand it all myself first. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Winters, it's time for your mother's medication. Daniel nodded. We'll go. Will you call me if there's any change overnight? Of course, the nurse assured him, moving to Eleanor's side. As we prepared to leave, Eleanor stirred and opened her eyes. Danny, are you going? Yes, Mom, it's late. You need to rest. Will you come back tomorrow? There was a childlike vulnerability in her question. I will, he promised. And I'll bring Megan again and pictures of your grandchildren. Her face lit up. Grandchildren? I have grandchildren? Daniel nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Emma and Noah, they're amazing. You'll love them. Eleanor smiled, the bright pink lipstick smeared slightly at the corners of her mouth. I always wanted grandchildren. Then her gaze wandered, and she seemed to forget we were there. In the car on the way home, we rode in silence for several minutes, each processing the evening's revelations. I was so wrong, I finally said. I jumped to the worst conclusion. Daniel reached across to take my hand. I gave you reason to doubt. Secrecy breeds suspicion. I know that. But still, I should have trusted you more. After 15 years, I should have known you better than that, he sighed heavily. Marriage is hard, Meg. We get comfortable, take things for granted. Start assuming instead of asking. He glanced over at me. Maybe this was a wake-up call we needed. What do you mean? When was the last time we really talked? Not about the kids or the mortgage or whose turn it was to schedule the plumber, but about us? About what we're feeling, thinking, dreaming? I considered this. He was right. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped sharing our inner lives, settled for coexisting instead of truly connecting. I miss you, I admitted softly. Even though you're right there every day, I miss who we used to be together. Me too, he said. Maybe that's why I didn't tell you about Eleanor right away. We'd gotten so used to handling things separately, efficiently, dividing and conquering. He squeezed my hand. I don't want that anymore. I want us back. Tears burned behind my eyes. I want that too. When we arrived home, Mrs. Feldman reported that the children had slept peacefully. After she left, Daniel and I sat at our kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs of tea, and really talked for the first time in years. About Eleanor, about his feelings on discovering his birth family, about the fear of watching someone slip away into the fog of Alzheimer's. I listened, asked questions, reached for his hand when words failed him. And he listened too, as I confessed my insecurities. How terrified I'd been that our marriage was over. How the distance that had grown between us had made my suspicions seem plausible. I want to meet your sister, I said as the night grew late. And I want to bring the kids to meet Eleanor while she still has good days. Daniel's eyes filled with gratitude. She'd love that. And Caroline is eager to meet you too. She has 3 kids about the same ages as ours. As we finally climbed the stairs to bed, exhausted but somehow lighter, Daniel paused at our bedroom door. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For being willing to hear the truth. For not giving up on us, even when you thought the worst. I leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of him. I almost did. Give up on us, I mean. But you didn't, he murmured against my hair. You cared enough to be angry, to demand answers. Is that what love is? I wondered aloud. Caring enough to fight for the truth? He pulled back to look at me, his eyes serious. I think maybe it is, at least part of it. In our room, as we undressed for bed, Daniel pulled the stained shirt from his overnight bag where he'd placed it earlier. What should we do with this? He asked. I took it from him, running my thumb over the pink mark that had caused so much pain and, ultimately, healing. Keep it, I said. To remind us. Of what? That we should always ask before we assume. That secrets, even well-intentioned ones, can damage what matters most. I folded the shirt carefully and placed it on my dresser. And that sometimes what looks like betrayal is actually love in a form we didn't recognize. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind, and we stood there together, looking at the shirt that had almost torn us apart but had instead forced us to find our way back to each other. I love you, he whispered. No secrets, no distance. Not anymore. I turned in his embrace, pressing my forehead to his. I love you too. All of you, including your newly discovered family. As we settled into bed, curling toward each other in a way we hadn't for too long, I thought about Eleanor and her pink lipstick, reaching across decades to find the son she'd had to give away. I thought about the courage it must have taken her to search for him, knowing she was running out of time. "Daniel?" I murmured, already half asleep. "Tomorrow I want to buy a new lipstick." "Oh?" he asked, his voice equally drowsy. "What color?" I smiled in the darkness. "Bright pink. The kind that leaves a mark." Eleanor's good days grew fewer, her recognition of Daniel more sporadic. But we visited regularly, all of us as a family. Emma and Noah brought drawings, told her about school, held her fragile hands without hesitation or judgment. "She's still in there," Daniel would say on the hardest days, when she called him by her brother's name or didn't speak at all. "Somewhere she remembers." We became close with Caroline and her family, discovering similarities between cousins who shared DNA but had never known each other. Sunday dinners became noisy, joyful affairs with twice as many people around our expanded table. The bright pink lipstick became a private symbol between Daniel and me. I wore it on date nights, leaving deliberate marks on his collar that we laughed about later. A reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything, and how much stronger we'd grown by facing the truth together. One evening, as we prepared for bed, Daniel emerged from the bathroom with something in his hand. "I found this while going through some old boxes," he said, holding out a faded photograph. "It's Eleanor when she was about 17. The home gave it to me from their records." I took the photo carefully. A teenage girl stared back at me, her dark eyes, Daniel's eyes, serious yet hopeful. She wore a simple dress and, incongruously, bright pink lipstick that seemed bold for the era. "She was beautiful," I said. "You have her eyes." Daniel nodded, his throat working. "Mom, Margaret, my adoptive mom, used to say I had old eyes, that I seemed to be carrying something from before." He took the photo back, studying it. "I guess now I know what she meant." I wrapped my arms around him, holding him close as he tucked the photo into the frame of our bedroom mirror, beside school pictures of our children and vacation snapshots of our family, our ever-expanding family that now included Eleanor and her legacy. "No more secrets," I whispered, repeating what had become our mantra. "No more secrets," he agreed. "Only truth, even when it's messy." The lipstick stain that had nearly destroyed our marriage had led us to a deeper understanding of love's complexity, how it endures across time and circumstance, how it demands honesty and forgiveness in equal measure. Eleanor had taught us that, with her bright pink lipstick and her relentless determination to find what had been taken from her before time ran out. In searching for her son, she had unknowingly saved our marriage, and for that I would be forever grateful.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.